So I got on impulse today some pork rinds. They were actually artisan pork rinds at Whole Foods today. I was
Artisan.
beyond hungry. I needed more sustenance than just tortilla chips. So I purchased these artisan pork rinds that were about, I think they were about $3.50. And they were about a fourth the size of the pork rinds you would have bought at 7-Eleven.
I love that's what makes them artisan, of
I guess
course.
so. It's the artisan. The expensive print on the bag brings out the flavor. There wasn't enough salt and pepper in it, and I sort of wished that I had grabbed the seasonings and like the dressings and the salts and peppers at the salad bar and just poured it into it before I left because it was definitely artisan and they were going for a minimalist flavor.
Do you put hot sauce on your pork rinds?
Fuck yeah.
You pour it in the bag? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Pour it in the bag, shake it up, and then you
Yeah.
put
Oh
hot
boy.
sauce on each individual piece afterwards.
So a long time ago, being like 20 years ago, I had a building in Chicago, and we lived in the hog butcher capital of the world, which is Chicago, but we lived right next to the stockyards. And so we'd hear at night them slaughtering animals. We'd hear it. But one of the things was there was a place where they made the pork rinds, so we would get fresh. We could get fresh pork rinds. I would
Freshly
get.
killed pork
Oh
rinds.
yeah. So I would get them for friends. I've never been a big pork rind fan. I know it and I appreciate it, but I'm whatever. It's I'm a bacon fan. I just skip the bacon.
I'd rather either have bacon or cracklins.
Yeah, cracklins. Either yeah, right, right.
I feel like pork rinds are a little not enough. It's like eating pie crust without the pie.
They're very much a serial killer snack, if you ask me. It's like I think of Ed Gein, like it's just pigskin. So it's like, oh God, I
Who
don't
wants
know.
to wear the pig skin?
Yeah,
I
the
want
pork.
to wear the, oh my goodness, my jacket today is like the color of a pig costume. Look at this. I'm dressed up for my pork rinds with my pigskin colored hoodie, and then when I pull it up off my head, my newly dyed red hair is the color of the pig's blood.
I love it. No one will be able to see this.
Use your imagination. This podcast is based around the history and experiences of the infamous Shane Bugbee, recollected and retold by Shane Bugbee himself. Who is Shane? Well, you're about to find out. I'm your host, Nannerl, and this is Speak of the Devil. Today, I'm going to take my cunt and show up at your cunt, and today we're going to talk about my cunt, publishing. So, I've mentioned it before in a previous episode last season. It's the Young Shane episode about my cunt publishing. It's Shane's publishing company he started when he was 16, and it covered everything from the obscene to the more obscene. And are you still publishing under this name, or is it just under Shane Bugbee now?
I use it. I use it all the time. I still use it. It's just something I revert to. It's. I guess I just put out a book, The Joys of Satanism. I put Michael Hunt Publishing in there, and I think it's just something to trick other people or let people in the know I did it. But it's like it's a publishing company. It sounds cooler than self-publishing for some reason. So even though it is basically now self-publishing, I used to publish other people's work.
It's quite
Now I would not
interesting
publish.
that like people now celebrate the I came out with this myself, whereas when you started My Cunt Publishing, you had to publish under a name, just like music
Oh
and
yeah.
publishing under a label.
Oh yeah. And I was one of the first people on to do like print on demand And I remember publishers were like, "That's horror." You know, a lot of it was like total weak. They would make fun of it, and I'm like, "This is just the future. This is the way it is. Self-publishing's where it's at." But yeah, Michael Hunt Publishing. I don't know if I've spoke about this before, but it was just a way to have a pen name for me. You know, it was basically a pen name, and everything I did, I was like had to mimic what I saw. So if I saw a publisher I liked and they're going by a publishing name, I needed to go by a publishing name. So I was mimicking things. I was learning as I went along. The Michael Hunt name came after I saw Porky's. I don't know if I've said this before, probably. But I saw Porky's and they used the Mike Hunt name, and I was always getting made fun of for my real name at the currency exchange where I would cash checks. You know, people would send you, back in the day, you'd send money to a P.O. box or stamp, you know, it's $5 postage and handling or $5 in stamps. And so anyway, I came
mhm.
I came up with Michael Hunt because they made fun of my name.
If you've never seen Porky's, millennials, go see Porky's. Like, you can't watch movies like Superbad or Pineapple Express or The Hangover or these other kind of silly adventure of rambunctious losers kind of movie without seeing Porky's.
Right.
Watch Caddyshack also while you're at it.
Oh God, I
And
can't believe
Police Academy.
I can't believe I'm so old that you have to tell people that. I'm like, of course, those are classics, but I guess you're right. Kids don't know.
Kids don't know Stripes either.
Oh, another good one. Those are good.
The best part is when he throws the basketball out the window. All right. Well, back to Mike Hunt, because we all want to talk about Mike Hunt. So in the previous episode, we talked about Mike Diana, and he was published under Mike Hunt. Were your serial killer materials also published under this name?
Yes, most everything was, and if it wasn't, it was like MHP Publishing. You know, I would just shorten it. I think a couple things may have been published under Lion's Paw, but basically me.
Was this under Lion's Paw under Chicago's umbrella or under your own publishing as Lion's Paw?
My own publishing. I just took
your own Lion's Paw.
Yeah, my own Lion's Paw.
All right, your Lion's Paw and your cunt. Bunch of pussy work from Shane.
What was that?
Bunch of pussy work from Shane.
Yes. It's my favorite kind of work.
Now, there's a lot of controversial works out there. The one that I mentioned in the previous episode, The Suffering and Celebration of Life in America, is actually one of my personal favorites. It's a good look at a road trip, especially if you're a person like me who does not feel safe going to every state in America. And it's an interesting thing because, you know, when you meet Shane in person, he's a very, well, I've never met him in person, but on Skype, he's a very everyman. He speaks to any, you know, and maybe it's the Chicago flair, maybe it's his, you know, his education level versus his extensive life experience. But I can see why people were willing to open up to him. And he approached and profiles, when I say profile, I don't mean police profiling. He kind of features these profiles of different kind of people around America. And it's quite a good representation of people who are otherwise forgotten about in America.
Oh, yeah. Forgotten zip codes. That project, I wish that book was how I wanted it. I'm so, a lot of people say I'm ahead of the times or a canary in the coal mine kind of person. But that book was the first, that was, boy, like I was the first one to do print on demand out of publishing. And that one there is almost like a not a Michael Hunt publishing, but it is. But the goal with that was to see, that's a boovie. It's not a book or a movie. It's a boovie. It's a book and movie. and it has 250 short videos attached to it. So I wanted that thing to be basically interactive. I wanted it to be all online. So when you read the story, a video would pop up of the person doing the, like you'd read the interview and then there'd be a video of it. So it was meant to be very interactive, but the internet couldn't hold it. This was when phones were just getting cameras. And so the idea of a road trip, people have done road trip books plenty. But my thought was, I think if anything is going to be special about this, we might capture the last moments of American innocence before the internet explosion. Like that, this was at the early stages. There was no MySpace, there was no Facebook. Oh, there was a MySpace. There was no Facebook. There was no Twitter. There was no GoFundMe. There was Craigslist and MySpace. And that's what we had to depend on.
How did you fund this?
Oh, we worked town to town.
Okay.
So we left with $120. And so we'd put ads through Craigslist. And there was eventually a movie made that riffed off of what we did, where they went and traveled and did, it was like, I forget a famous actor helped put it out. And they riffed off it, and they even riffed off some of our press materials. So we're like, what the fuck? They're ripping us off. They took the idea and just traveled for like a month and used Craigslist to meet people. So that's what we did. We would put like, we'll trade husband for food, whatever. And it was once
we'll trade husband for food.
We'll trade wife for food or work. And that was the headline. And then in it would say we were documentarians and we're here to film your story.
I'll gladly give you my cunt for a meal.
Yeah, yeah. And so we would film people's stories, and everyone was stoked because it was they didn't understand. They were like, we're putting this on TV. We just had to make it easy for them, because if we told them the internet, they're like, what is that? We're putting it on a blog. What is that? Those words were not commonplace. So we just had to say, we're putting this on TV, and we want to film you and get your political opinion. This is when Obama was running, and we wanted to go to all the non-voters and the ignored zip codes to talk to them about voting. At the time, I was opposed to voting, and I wanted people to burn the place down. I'm pissed off and wondering why people vote at all. It seems useless. I am since totally opposite of that, and I vote and all that, but. So people welcomed us with open arms, and they would fill our gas tank and give us some money for doing dishes or whatever. And we wouldn't have to do much like that. They didn't make us work. They would show us their town and say, hey, I think this is interesting. Why don't you film this? Why don't you film this? It was neat. It was a neat project. I thought it was, when I look at it now, I really feel it caught that last moment of American innocence. Like, it was really cool. As far as technology goes, it belongs in the history of the evolution of social media, let's say. We were the first people doing that stuff. There was no one else doing it. And I personally feel really special about that. And eventually the Internet Archive in San Francisco took all of our footage and everything, and they have it hosted. So you could see all of it.
The entire thing.
All of it, raw footage, the writing that never made it into the book, the full movie. Yeah, all of it is up on Internet Archive now. And that was real special to go there. I spent a week helping them load it in, and they put it on a special hard drive, which will be, they have like hard drives that they keep things all over the world, just in case they're attacked, because they believe they're like the Greek libraries. And so if they're attacked in San Francisco and they're destroyed, burned down, anything like that, it's in other places in the world. And so they took our collection and really, really honored what we did. They really thought it was cool. It was neat.
It's kind of like being added to Gettysburg or Smithsonian. And
modern, right.
Right. And if that isn't validation, what is?
Yeah, I know. I wonder personally, I wonder how to use that to get ahead in my life. But no matter what I have, I spoke at Harvard twice. I have the Internet Archive. I have all these cool accomplishments. They don't seem to amount to a hill of beans for me, because I think it's the class of person,
There were a lot of people who didn't appreciate great artists when they were alive, and posthumously we celebrate them. And perhaps this is one of your paths.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's how it feels. And I knew that as a young kid, I told Heart Warrior Chosa, one of my guides, a great Native American from Ojibwe clan up in Ely. We'd talk about this stuff. And I told her as a little kid that I always knew I would have influence, but I would never have wealth. I would never have acclaim, but I would have influence. And I don't want to self-manifest that because I'd like to have some acclaim and some security in my life present day. But it certainly seems that way, that I don't know how history could deny what I've done or the people I've worked with have done. Like, it's not all me, you know, but certainly it's a weird thing to be involved in historic things like that and be accepted in the Internet Archive. And then I don't know how to explain it. It's just it's a trip. It's hard to talk sometimes because I don't mean to brag. Like, I used to brag about this stuff. At this point, it's like, oh God, it's just reminds me of all the things I don't get credit for.
It hurts, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of times the bias someone might have for discrediting someone is made out of spite. A lot of times, I think that in the age of the internet, if someone's never heard of you and then they hear about you, they'll Google your name, they'll see it checks out, and that's that. I think that when others have another voice in their ear to decide what to do with that information, that's a totally different story. If someone censors someone's thoughts and says, hey, Nannerl's a bitch. Hey, Nannerl's a fake ass and she doesn't make her own music and her husband does everything, then they're not going to even pay attention to what I'm doing. And I'm sure it's the same way for Shane. I'm sure that the first thing someone thinks of when they think of Mike Hunt Publishing or anything that you've published is going to be something problematic. And it's sort of interesting and entertaining to me that Internet Archive is based in San Francisco, which is sort of the gold standard of progressive.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm pretty sure they don't like Nazis there. And they really like to have their civil liberties, and they like being a sanctuary city. They enjoy, they've been historically a haven for a lot of downtrodden refugees and different kinds of people, and the start of counterculture. And a lot of, oh gosh, I don't know. Someone named Anton Lavey lived in San Francisco, and his family did too. And he went back there after LA didn't work out for him. And I believe there's actually a law that you can't own a lion because of Lavey in San Francisco. But that and Shane having stuff on Internet Archives, maybe that's not as important as an opinion on Twitter, but I'm just digressing.
As far as that's you bring up San Francisco, and I think when I think about that stuff, the sad stuff, I also think about there's this balance, like from where I come from though, like the low class I come from, it's like I've had an amazing ride. I was able to have dinner with Lawrence Ferlinghetti, the guy who helped start the Beat Poets and published Ginsberg's Howl, an obscene book. I mean, I was able to have dinner with him, and I've been invited to places that most people could not get into. Like, they just don't, like, I was invited to LaVey's house. I had double stuffed Oreos with Lavey. I had linguine and clams with Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Like, I feel like almost like a Forrest Gump almost, or some shit. I don't know. I've never seen the movie. I've seen clips of it, so I can only relate to like 5 minutes of understanding it. But I've been all around and had these remarkable experiences that a plumber from the Midwest that has no education just doesn't get. They see it on TV. We live things vicariously. And so the riches I've received has been able, I've been invited on reservations. I've hung out with, just really cool people and cool artists.
It's interesting that your experiences are later on, even if they're accidentally, they are often emulated by people who wish to capture the essence of things. I think of, hipsters backpacking across America or in Europe or something and trying to, Craigslist their way through work just to like travel wherever and doing the same exact thing that you did 10 plus years before them. Or look at how you were allowed on a reservation. Do you know how many white people probably really wish that they were given that special opportunity?
Oh, yeah, I do. And I not only that, like I'm allowed behind the curtains in a lot of places. And I asked a gentleman who was the president of the tribe, which some people would call chief if you're ignorant to this,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not called chiefs anymore. They're president. And so the president of the Ojibwe tribe told me that I lack pretense. That's why we welcome you. And you lack the pretense of the white man. And so I don't know what that, like for me, I just was happy that I was let in and I get to see things other people don't get to see. It's pretty neat.
What it probably meant, and listeners, I have a tribal affiliation card. I know I talk about the other parts of my ethnic background. I have a literal race card, so fight me. I'm pretty sure what he means by you don't have the white man's pretense is you didn't come in and say, oh, are we going to sit Indian style? Oh, hey, Chief, how? Or anything like that. And there is a pretense that has been historically around, I'm going to say since at least the silent generation. But it was really, really, really out there in the baby boomer generation. No offense, baby boomers. I don't like the Beatles, but I like other parts of your music. I like Summer of Love. I like Woodstock music. Fuck the Beatles. Anyway,
Agreed.
I think that the idea that, the Native American, the Indians do it this way, the Japanese do it this way, the Chinese do it this way. And there's this weird Disney small world stereotyping that it tends to happen in that era of America. And we sort of teach it in school sometimes still, not so much anymore, but kind of where, we tell our kids in school what the Indians wore to Thanksgiving or other very stereotypical things about, oh, burping is actually pretty polite in some cultures and all these other very broad strokes to try to be mindful, but it's very lazy mindfulness. And while it's well-intentioned and for older generations, it is probably polite to them. A lot of white people, I feel like, are not comfortable with being told, I'm cringing right now, I don't like this, by even, people of color that they are giving the pretense toward. So I think that as a whole makes a lot of white people entering those circles trouble.
I see. I could see that. For me, I think like I've been told I have this learning disability or whatever, and ADHD or Asperger's and all that stuff. And I think that might have something to do with it. I have a natural curiosity and a wondrous nature. So I'm just like really genuine when I want to go someplace. Or I'm invited someplace. I really want to know what they're talking about, what they're trying to say. I'm and I'm always honored to be welcome somewhere. Maybe that has something to do with the life I came from, feeling invisible. So whenever I feel visible and it's always people on the margins though, that'll take me in and show me behind their curtain. I shouldn't say that. I mean, at Harvard, I was talking and I got to see a lot of stuff. And at Google, I've been able to see a lot of stuff. I've been invited into their campus and shit. But for the most part, I don't know. I wonder what it is. I just know I'm wondrous. And I'm like a slave to wonder, let's say. I'm very curious, and I love doing interviews, but that's how I get my education. That's how I've gotten my education. It wasn't through school. It was I dropped out of school early, as you well know, and I just ask questions of people all the time. I don't know. I found a way to do it in a way that was taken seriously and not looked at like a dope. Like, I'm here to interview for my magazine. It's a zine, shitty zine. Or I'm here to interview you for TV, even though it's just a blog, you know.
But I think that people of all ilks really appreciate that. That genuine curiosity means that you're not proving something. You're not trying to validate your stereotypes. You're not trying to educate yourself just to virtue signal or anything like that, where you're trying to display what a good person you are. You just want to learn something. And I think people who are willing to learn let their guard completely down, and that's very easy to approach.
So I can't argue with that. I can't argue with that. It's true. Like, I definitely let my guard down in those situations.
When you did your boovie, did you meet the same response from the people around America that you encountered outside of Native folk?
Oh, absolutely. And you know, the one thing I found in that travel that has grounded me today in the worst of times that I'm having at time, you know, when I have the worst of times, is that, and this is weird coming from my life, but someone explained it to me and I'll tell you that, but I found trust, and I found most people are decent. And I guess because I was surrounded by dysfunction and abuse and alcoholism and all this really horrible stuff in my family, and the zip code I was around, I thought everyone was rotten and I wanted to see the world burn. I hated everything. And I think there's a quote by Mark Twain or someone that says basically travel helps kill prejudice.
I think
And
it's
if,
Mark Twain.
yeah, if that's not the truth, I don't know what is. For me, and I'm not saying I was prejudiced, I was ignorant. But, and I guess you could have prejudice and be
It is a
ignorant.
prejudice, and
Yeah,
prejudice doesn't necessarily mean you're racist.
right. So I did have prejudice, I guess, or ignorance and prejudice. And I'll tell you, leaving that surroundings and hitting the country and going around and putting ourselves in peril, I most certainly did find that people were decent, and we stayed in really bad zip codes. And almost everyone we stayed with said, watch out for this next town. Beware of the next people, be afraid. So we travel into this fear, and it was always good. One time in New Orleans, I was drunk and high and driving, and I got lost. And I ended up in a bad neighborhood. And as I was getting out of the car, there was someone smacking a woman, like beating this prostitute down. And I was like, oh, fuck. And I'm already stepping out of the car. I'm from Chicago, so I've seen this before. And I'm already in motion, so I can't back up and act afraid. I have to keep moving forward. So I walk in the gas station, and I'm like, oh, and the whole place is filled with fucking people, and they're like, I'm like, I'm lost. I'm looking for this road. And I'm like, fuck, and they're like, motherfucker, you really lost being here. And I'm like, oh no. And they're like, you motherfucker, you got to go down this way, take a left down this way. And you dumb motherfucker, he's got to go this way. And everyone's arguing at the gas station, tell me which way to go. And I'm like, all right, which way is it? And they're like, motherfucker, I told you right, motherfucker, right. And I'm like, okay, right at this street? Yeah. You got it now? You dumb motherfucker. I go, yeah, I got it. Thank you, brother. And I leave. But I leave, and I'm like, but everyone there helped me in a violent way, in a violent, scary way. Every single person was helping.
They just wanted you to get the fuck out of there, mind your own.
Yeah, right. Whatever it was, And they came out, and they're like, "Come out, follow me to the car." You got that? You got what I'm saying? Yeah, I got it. You got clean that. Put your hair away from your ears. You got shit in your ears, huh? It was just funny. But nowhere did we run into. Now we ran into some, situations, but people are decent. People just want to get by. People aren't all the things that you're made out to believe they are. People are just people, and they really do, want to get by. They don't. I don't think they're into violence. That's where I started to come into the idea that, wow, as a species, we cooperate with one another. That's how we evolve. We cooperate and we're considerate of each other. And it's beyond this brutality of, might is right, let's say, or whatever, which is a book I published as well.
I think that getting by and getting by versus doing something out of desperation to survive, they go hand in hand, but there is a line that crosses. And if you lack pretense and you approach a situation as you did, again, you had your guard completely down when you said you were lost. When these people were telling you where to go, you just listened. You didn't fight what they were saying, and you did nothing that would possibly agitate those people. So maybe they saw also that you lacked pretense.
Yeah. Well, I definitely know. I spent, as a runaway, I spent some time living in a black neighborhood with a black family, and you definitely learn. I was taught that you don't have fear, and you don't have any kind of emotions. You act like like it's your family, your friends. You just act normal. And that's something I learned, because prior to that, I was afraid. When I lived with that family, I definitely was afraid. And so that's something in that situation, I just knew, like I said, when I got out of the car, act normal, act like you would anywhere else. Don't act afraid. Don't treat this situation any different than you would anywhere else. They're just people. These are just people. And that's what we learned, throughout the trip is, like I said, we stayed with so many different people, Christians, and it was funny. You stay with this one Christian, like, well, how do you find your values if you're not a Christian? I'm like, oh God.
I go to Kmart, savings are enormous.
How offensive to hear that, so, but it was neat. It was neat to do. That was a special, a special time for sure. And it was nice to travel with my dog, Cheyenne.
R.A.P. Cheyenne.
Yeah, Cheyenne's was a good friend. Oh my God, I just heard a dog bark.
I know. It was kind of like that person, that dog's barking went out for Cheyenne.
That's right, channeling Cheyenne. Yeah, so, yeah, I don't know. Michael Hunt Publishing was an interesting ride for sure.
I want to mention, actually, it's a good time to do so. You published Might Is Right, and recently, more specifically, the ass end of July, which feels like was the worst retrograde in, ever.
Yeah.
Just came to a head, and that zip popped all over the place because there was a tragic shooting. And in the news, Might Is Right was mentioned because the perpetrator, well, there were two of them, and I guess one didn't get caught, the other one committed suicide. The one who shot himself, that perp, he had quoted Might Is Right as one of his favorite books and all these different things that just brought all over again the media trying to find something besides guns to blame. And I'm not saying this as a statement for or against guns. I'm just saying our media likes to find a scapegoat when it's a kid who's white passing. And Might Is Right suddenly was in the news again. I want to say that Kevin Slaughter of COS is the most recent publisher of this. You are no longer a publisher of Might Is Right? Or is
right.
This? Okay.
That's true.
Okay. So it's interesting how, one, good for you that you didn't get suddenly targeted by the world as, oh my God, you monster, you caused this to happen. But at the same time, this is a good example of, not once have I heard you tell me, oh, hell no, I did not publish this book. No, I didn't publish it. Or anything like that due to this shooting. You you published it, you own up to it, and we've had some interesting conversations about just that, what it is. And how do you feel about the existence of it coming back all of a sudden?
Well, you can say there's a most recent publisher, but before me, there was one person who had put it out, which was Loom Panics.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very rare book to find. I published it with Lavey, Anton Lavey, and a actual white supremacist, George Eric Hawthorne. I didn't publish it with them, but I used them as the afterword and forward. So when I published it, no one was publishing it. And much like the Mike Diana books, I made sure it sold. I made sure it got publicity. I went up to I forget what it's called, the LeBode department or something like that in Upper Michigan. It's a college that had the original manuscript for Might Is Right. It's from the University of Chicago. And I studied it. I studied it thoroughly. And Lavey gave us his opinion. He thought Jack London was one of the authors. And when I went up to this Detroit department, the professor there felt Lavey might be right. And he showed me a bunch of Jack London's socialist writings, and they were very much like Might Is Right. So Kevin Slaughter publishes it because I gave it life. And most people who publish it now publish it because of the life I gave it. And I don't say that as a brag. I say that as an explanation to the heavy emotions I felt when I took it off sale in 2016 after Trump won the election. I thought I would keep that book in publication for the rest of my life. That would be the one book I would always republish. And after I saw it being misinterpreted in 2016, I was like, oh, fuck. And I thought about when I first met Lavey, the first thing he did when he walked into his den where the altar was, sitting on his couch. He walks in and waves that book at me. Bugby, Bugby, Bugby. Do you realize what you put out here? This is pure dynamite, kid. You don't even realize what you're doing, do you? And I said, what am I doing? I'm putting out a book. He goes, you're putting out pure dynamite on the streets. This is going to change things, kid. And he put that book down. And to see the way it's going, in 2016, I was like, I need to redirect this somehow. I need to figure out a way to talk with my heart and not my anger, to publish with my heart and not my anger. And so I took it off sale, even though knowing right there, I was like, this is one of those moments where, well, I can't get credit for Internet Archive. I can't get credit for anything else I've done. I know someone who'll embrace me. I can get embraced by the fucking alt-right. I could be publishing this all day long and making money. And I thought about it right there. And I was like, it's just not my heart. And I can't believe, for me, when I published that book, it was for the downtrodden, the Palestinians, let's say, the people who are getting beaten on. It was to tell them the secrets of life. It was such a hard book for me to read. When I first went through it, it was hurt my feelings constantly. I was like, oh my goodness, this is me. Oh my goodness, this is, and I published it for historic reasons because Lavey riffed off it to make the Satanic Bible. I published it for a lot of reasons. And back in the day, Michael Hunt Publishing, me as the Michael Hunt Publishing at 25 years ago, hell, when this shooting would have happened, I would have it on sale. I'd be taking out ads everywhere going, yeah, that's my book, baby. Come to me with all the controversy. I would accept it. And in 2016, after I took it off sale, which is real weird, the Pope mentioned it and Obama mentioned it. And when that happened, I was like, oh my God, I'm so fucked. I am fucked as a human being. No one's ever going to want me again. No one's going to deal with me. This is fucked. And when they mentioned it, the young person in me was happy. Like the kid from back in the day I thought about, I was like, that would be me. I'd be having a picture of Obama in an ad and quoting him, might is not right. And the Pope saying it the week earlier, a week after, because Trump is a person who lives by that doctrine. And so he rules by that doctrine. And so for me, it was important to get away from it. And not because I'm afraid of the controversy. I have 25 years of controversy. I mean, it's not like I could, It's not like I shook hands with the white supremacist or something and I can get away from that and, disavow it or something. I put out the rape issue. I put out heavy books back in my day, books they were unapologetic and hate filled and all that. And so it's just because that's not where my politics reside. That's not what I'm about. I'm a Bernie Sanders fan. I'm about people being taken care of. I'm about and people, a lot of these people are like a lot of Satanists are libertarians at heart. And I don't think they understand the concept of privilege yet and stuff like that. So I always thought, like, if you're ever going to try to do the concept of libertarianism, you'd need to implement, 8 generations of socialism first. You really have to give people a chance to get a foot up and see where the lazy bastards lie. Like, hey, you've had 80 years to take an education. Your family's had all this time. You've had all the health care you could swallow, all the college you could swallow. I guess at that point you can find the weak and the strong. I'm not sure even though if with that, but I know that I just wasn't comfortable having anything to do with that shit anymore. That doesn't mean I don't appreciate the philosophy of Satanism. I just see things differently. I see things as less of an individual construct and more of a we're all one construct within occultism. We're the all, not the one. And until you find your place within the all, you can't be the individual that you aspire to be. It's the backwards with Satanism. They believe in taking care of number one first. And I believe in fitting into the all. What's your place? Are you a violinist? Are you, who are you? What are you? Are you a musician? Are you a sculptor? Are you a plumber? Once you fit into the all, you can figure out the self. Anyway.
I think it's been backwards lately. And I think that Might is Right is a really hard pill to swallow. And I can understand how it got corrupted by people with very corrupt and dangerous ideas. But it doesn't mean that the book is wrong for everyone. And it doesn't mean it's necessarily a book that's bad for society.
Absolutely.
If a killer read The Very Hungry Caterpillar and quoted that as his favorite book, it doesn't mean we're going to cut that out. Look how many people have been killed by the Bible.
I was going to say, as you've mentioned, Satanism is a very young religion. And so with the books that founded we're going to find our fanatics now.
Yes.
And these are our fanatics. Just like the Bible has abortion doctors being shot all the time. People are fanatics, shoot up abortion clinics, stuff like that. So it's like, or Planned Parenthood, a year ago was shot up. So the Christian faith has a lot of fanatics, and Satanism is going to have their share of fanatics. It does not make a book a bad thing to me either. It's just a book. It's an individual perception on the book is not my as a publisher. How do I feel about someone shooting up the place, or how do I feel about people interpreting books I put out in any which way? I have run the gamut of emotions, but I've been able to think about this for 30 years, and there's no reasonable thought that I can come across that I can take responsibility for each individual's interpretation of what they read. It's so complex. How could I know your interpretation? That's for you to work out, not me. I'm just putting out a book. So that's how I see that.
I think that the forward and afterword of your copy is something that when people come after you, either verbally or on the internet, I think they need to also take a look at, yes, Lavey is the forward and the afterword is done by George Birdie, but that's his other name, right?
That's his real name, yes.
Okay. Um, and you should probably also think about that detail there. It sort of it doesn't neutralize any problematic issues that the book might have, but like we've talked about in private, I almost interpret it like the gang truce that happened during the LA riots. It's
Yeah.
the red and blue bandanas tied together.
When I did that, it's funny because when I did that, I'm a person who likes to juxtapose things in my art, everything. It's like put the opposites together,
Your
let them
aesthetic.
clash. Yeah, that's my aesthetic. Let me show you. And I'll tell you, I got death threats from Nazis, and they'd sign it and put their social security number on there. And then the Satanists would send me curses. We're going to curse you. So I enjoyed all the hate mail I was getting. I just loved it. And I'd get phone calls, and I just loved I can't tell you how much I loved the death threats and the curses back then. It was just such a thrill to be noticed, as a young, invisible, poor guy. So it was cool. I liked publishing the book, and I liked my experiences with it. And I see, I like that I was progressive enough to know to take it off sale when I did. I'm glad I'm not selling it right now when that has happened. Because it's just not who and what I am. I'm just not into that. I'm not into the controversy. I'm not into defending that book really, or any, I don't know how to explain it. I'm just happy that I don't have it under my wing right now.
I respect that. I really appreciate that you can own up to that too. Satanists,
I don't know how can you not?
Exactly.
How can you not as a person? Like I didn't do anything to hide.
No.
All my stuff is like I'm a life artist, so everything I did, my painting's done when I'm dead. So people get to make their decisions then. Right now, I don't know what to say, But that's just one aspect of my. Well, here, have I ever told you about the anarchist book fair when I put out Might Is Right?
Yes, you did. How you were there with Lavey, and the anarchists saw that this is not dangerous.
Well, they saw it.
Well,
and they
it's not white supremacist, is what I mean.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah. They saw it on the table, and they saw the collection of work that I did, the full body of work that I did, and they were like, "Oh, this guy couldn't be a white supremacist. This other stuff would get you beaten to hell by a Nazi." So, obviously this guy just is looking to make trouble, and they're right.
Well, here's something. Did the white supremacists that you encountered 20 plus years ago find you as someone who lacked pretense also?
Yes, they welcomed me in, and we went up to Canada, saw the Rahowa concert. They were kind to me, and I was happy to be there to observe. As I always taken myself as a journalist, because that's what the state's attorney of Illinois that put Gacy down called me, a journalist. People call me a journalist, so I take it. I like it. That's who I am. Like, I'm inquisitive. So being there, it was neat to see, like, how they were treated, how we were treated just going to the concert, how Canadians treated us, how the cops treated us, how they walked, how the cops tried to provoke violence. It was wild because they would walk interracial couples right by the front door of the venue. And they were like undercover cops, and they were with the cops and stuff. So they kept walking back and forth trying to get these white supremacists to run out of the building. And it was sort of funny because inside there'd be like the pipsqueak of the whole group. I'm going to go out there and kill them. And they're all holding them back.
There's always that guy in those groups too. And he's like, okay, if everyone was an animal in that circumstance, I always imagine white supremacists to be like bull terrier type dogs or something like that. Maybe like white pit bulls with their full tail and blue eyes or something. And that one dude is like the little albino mouse.
Yeah. Right. Trying to prove himself or whatever.
It was just power!
It was weird. We were at a VFW hall, and they were serving up like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and like little cut up sandwiches.
White bread only.
White bread. It was funny. It was so, I don't know. It was an experience. Not something I went to again. I didn't keep going, but it was I don't know. It was neat to see as a journalist. Like it was neat to be invited in and not be beat. I was worried to shit. Like I thought most journalists that go into those situations get their ass handed to them. Like they
Yes.
get beaten up. They're like, oh, they got me in a hotel room and knocked my teeth out. So I went up there afraid. I left afraid, but I survived and didn't get beaten up. Yes, that's true. And it's not like I was like up there undercover going, Sieg Heil. I didn't, I told them I'm not into this. You know, they knew.
But you also didn't fight their beliefs in front of their circles and make them feel unsafe in their own circles.
Well, no, I was there as a guest. So
Right.
like same as the Native Americans or anyone else. If I'm there as a guest, I just observe and report. That's my job as an artist, as a documentarian, as a journalist, whatever you want to put on
As
me.
a
I have
Satanist, if
yeah, I
you enter
observe
their
and
lair, you can't shit on them.
yeah, they'll destroy me. Right, that too. Exactly. But as a professional artist, I observe and I report. I observe and I document. I observe and I tell the story. I I don't go in there. I have a bias, but in general, I just have a curiosity. Like, what is this? I want to find out the truth. It was funny when I started taking ads from those people. It was for the Milwaukee Metal Fest program book, and this white supremacist group offers me all this money for advertising. I'm like, oh my goodness, what do I do? All of my white friends said, oh, you can't take it. It's dangerous. All this stuff. So Dina Weinstein, she's a professor at DePaul University, and she was a writer for my magazine. I asked her. She happens to be Jewish, and she said you have to take the ad. And I'm like, oh my God. And she's like, yes, if you don't, you give them too much power. And so I asked my black friend who was doing the cover, what do I do here? And he's like, you have to take the ad. If you don't, you give them too much power. And he's like, I'm going to make a special ad. I'm going to make a special cover for the magazine. So he made sure to make a mulatto, he said, or a half breed, black, made sure to put a person with dreadlocks. So the cover has this, what the artist said was a mixed breed, a black and white person with dreadlocks on the cover of it. And so we have a white supremacist ad inside it. And, so that's what happens. But the after result is that I knew a guy there, and he's like, I joined the KKK because of all that. And so there's the other side of it where I was like, oh my God, as a publisher, I'm like feeling the responsibility of being a publisher. Like, I was like, Andy, Andy had such a big heart. He was a really kind person, but dumb as shit. Of course, he joined the KKK. He's looking for a reason to blame for his low end life. Like, no money. And not even his fault. He was born into it. He wasn't lucky. Didn't have the luck of birth. So there is something about publishing that stuff. It does influence people, and I realized that in my older age. That's one of the reasons I took Might Is Right off sale too. I wasn't looking to influence people in that direction. But Michael on Publishing started as an anti-censorship thing. When I did my first zine, Naked Aggression, it was all about that. So that's the heart of it.
While publishing and just putting out media in general, it's getting harder and harder to censor something because things aren't on conventional television or publishing circuits the same way. It's interesting that the censorship comes out in social networking now. People sort of decide to maybe not hive, but just almost like gang approach, where they have to bully someone to take something down, cancel it, things like that. And I can see how this could attract a little bit of cancel culture, but at the same time, hearing back from people regarding Might Is Right, or seeing subtle, nods toward your involvement publishing Might Is Right, saying things like Might Is Not Right, which I understand what you're trying to say by saying Might Is Not Right, but it's turning into the all lives matter of statements on the internet this week. But seeing all that, is it sort of reminiscent of back when you did publish it? Is it sort of the same comments, just from different people?
No, these people are ignorant. Back when I published it, we didn't have the internet, so not every ignorant person did not have a mouthpiece. So when I published it, I was publishing it to people who liked books, who were intellectuals, who understood what a book was, and not someone who was looking to climb on top of a book to have their say, their ignorant say. I guess if when I look at some of that stuff and they're name calling and they're belittling, they're trying to be belittling, that is basically might is right. That is the same kind of thing. The opposite of might is right is like compassion and understanding, or trying to understand. I remember having an argument about the rebel flag being taken down, the first one that was taken down 5 years ago or so. And I had an argument, I was opposed to it. And because the people were reasonable, rational, intellectual, they slowly built an argument with me. And I argued with them for a week. They tried to understand my side of things. They asked me questions. And at some point, about a week later, I was like, holy shit, you've totally changed my mind. You're right. They should be taken down. And that's a big deal coming from a person who's a free speech advocate and a free express, all this stuff. It was a big deal but they were able to do that because they understood the idea. They were firmly rooted in their politics, where a lot of these people who are yammering on about being anti-might is right are just looking to have their own forum or they're just looking to be popular. They're heard.
It's a virtue signal.
Yeah, something, I don't know what that exactly is because it's a new phrase, but they're just becoming part of what the group think versus going, let's try to understand the reasons this was put out, or the age it was put out, or the time it was put out, or let's put this into context. They just want to yell about something that's going to get attention.
Because they want to get you also. They want to argue with someone, and it's a big trophy to cut off your head.
I guess I agree with that, but it's like, I think comes down to something you've said before. What have you done? Mm-hmm. It's going to take a lot. You're going to have a sword to cut my head off. And without much more than internet yammering as accomplishment, well, I'm not really going to pay you too much mind. It's like, don't pay, like most people in a professional artist ilk, we don't pay attention to the comments. We just make our art. You know what I mean? And so if we pay attention to the comments, it's just to sell a book. It's like when Cardi B is on Twitter and she pays attention to some of her comments, she retweets them, she argues with people here and there, but it all serves her. It all benefits her. If you're really emotional or something like that, you just don't pay attention to the comments. If I tried to comment with someone and they deleted a comment, so I just blocked them all. I was like, fuck it. But it was by my grace, my generosity, that I was actually commenting to them. I was looking, and I don't mean to say I'm looking down on them, but I was definitely like, let me give these kids a hand. Let me see if they actually want to talk about this in a reasonable, intellectual way. And, oh, well, for them, I mean, I've had the conversation about might is right with Anton Lavey. I've had the conversation with might is right with the best of them. And those people aren't going to have that conversation with me.
Even your conversation about might with the worst of them. Did everyone forget that Doug did the illustrations in your copy of Might is Right? And why aren't they coming at him about this?
I sometimes go ahead.
Oh, no.
I sometimes think it's because of education, class, and I'm overweight. And I think those things play a large part in people's biases, as I saw when some of these comments, these flabby, I saw a couple times call me fat or flabby. And that is a projection of why I'm discounted often. Often people that look different are in the margins, whether they're a person of color or they're fat. And so I think a lot of what's held me back in my success is being overweight. Now, hey, let me tell you, this is trauma fat, okay? I'm not that lazy of a person. It's trauma fat, but anyway.
You should publish your tuxedo photo in your About Me section of the podcast.
Why?
I don't know.
Because I look different? Okay. Well, I'll do that. I need to get some nice photos taken. But
Let's make an alter account for Shane called Chubby Stamos, and we'll use the tuxedo picture of you.
I love that. I love that.
The last point I wanted to make about because I could rail on and on about this, and I do want to come back to an earlier point about your early days before we wrap it up, is that I don't understand. Here's my last statement regarding it, is that I don't understand how people cannot pick and choose the context of one book, yet they quote Shakespeare and all these other pieces of literature that are older than Might is Right, that have anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, classism, all these different things, but they're okay with those ones. And they say, oh, well, it was a different time. Or they're into musicals like South Pacific that, don't get me started about how they portray Asian women as objects and how fucking racist the fucking main female character is about the half Asian children. And by the way, high school play, South Pacific's Tonkin people should not look like Hawaiians. They're a little more like Vietnamese people, but I digress. How can you pick and choose things from literature and other medium that you like, but something that you know nothing about, you decide that that's problematic?
Well, I think outside of my personal stuff, I think that it's a typical thing I've dealt with for 30 years now. And they're just fake intellectuals. They're wannabes. They're not actually thinking about what they're doing. And it's just what I said. They're looking to be in the herd mentality. I often wonder, because I came from such severe abuse, if that doesn't carry through in my words and my art, and people just naturally see this as, oh, this person has been picked on, so we can pick on them too. I'm not really sure. I've always wondered why I've been the target of such, from abuse from my parents to being picked on in high school.
I can go with that. Coming from marginalized people, sometimes puts a target on someone's back, or it's an easy way for people who are otherwise weak in conventional culture amongst people outside of their circle. They're usually the ones kicked around, and they decided, oh, here's my chance to get mine. So they decide that the person unfamiliar to the circle, the new person, or just the easy target is easy to kick around because A, you're the easy target. B, no one's going to suspect that they're bullying you, because why would you kick around this type of person that's controversial? So they're kind of being slick by doing so.
Yeah, well, slick or just showing, like for me, they just fit into the bigger 99%, let's say. And I'm talking about not in the wealth game, but like I find my group with intellectuals. I find my group with people who can handle the conversation and can try to have a thirst for understanding, and understand that we live in nuanced, circumstantial, individual existence. And when you understand that as a human being, and you try to live you try to accept people as, wow, this person is nuanced, circumstantial, and individual. So when they cut me off in traffic, maybe you're not so angry at them. It helps you out with your own well-being, because maybe you're like, oh, maybe they had a hard day. Maybe they were just fired. Maybe there's a death in their family. Maybe they just broke a foot. Why is this person being an asshole versus this person is an asshole? There's a difference between this person is an asshole or why is this person being an asshole? And most people, I think, these are the people who are, in the respects of Might is Right, these are the people who are into a philosophy who is, almost like live and let live type of, almost. But they're very judgmental. They're very cop-like. And so, I don't know. It doesn't fit into my world.
They want to say that something should live and let live, and they're okay with it as long as it doesn't make them feel small.
Yeah, right.
Well, coming back to Mike Hunt Publishing, let's go back to Mike Hunt. One big curiosity I have was that you've said many times how you dropped out of school when you were 16. How does someone, and I guess I'm asking out of my pure curiosity, but also to sort of answer for those of you frothing out the mouths with this question, trying to poke holes in your career, how, with a 16-year-old's education, were you able to be a publisher? Did anyone help you with that?
Oh, certainly, certainly. Well, first of all, it was just me doing it and stapling flyers together and going, let's make this zine Naked Aggression. Let's just do this. And I have like right now, you can get on YouTube and learn anything. Mm-hmm. And so I was always like that. So I would go to the library and ask librarians was my YouTube. And so it was always, yeah, certainly. So I would do that. And I was like, okay, we need a photocopy machine. And they weren't available everywhere. And I remember my one friend, Carmi, at some point, she was the vegetarian. And she did the vegetarian articles. And my buddy, Dave the Bong, was the free legal, make weed legal guy. And I was the anti-censorship person. And so staple all these flyers together. I'm like, we're going to do a magazine just like People magazine. So I saw my mother, the literature we had in our house was like People magazine. It's a entertainment magazine. If it's still around, I don't know. But it's a little garbage tabloid from the store. And I was like, let's do that, but with our words. And we'll do the first independent magazine ever produced. Once I do it, I find out there's a whole world of independent magazines. But I thought we were doing the first one. And so my one thing I do is I ask for help. And I asked Carmi for help. And Carmi has the biggest heart and is just a strong woman. And she helped. And she was like, you can't spell. You can't write, dude. Like, let me fix this for you. That's not a paragraph, bro. And so she would fix things. And then she started laying it out and we got involved. And, it was one of those friendships, much like our own. Like, we just start working together and enjoying our company and enjoying what we're building. It's the same thing that we're doing here. It's the same kind of thing. It's like, wow, let's do this. Like, I feel like a little kid when I'm doing this. And it feels like I feel like we're little kids. Just, hey, let's do this podcast. And so it's like, let's do this zine. And so Carmi would help out with it. And that's how it built up. And it was, I asked for help and I'm lucky to get help from some people, and sometimes I don't, and sometimes I do. And if I don't, I'll just put it out with all the spelling errors. Like the first one, it was funny. The first Naked Aggression was awful. I mean, I did it, most all of it. And it's like, censor this asshole on the cover. And it's like horrible, man. I'll put a photo of it. I'll put a photo of the cover on wherever we blog at. I think it's Patreon. And it's really atrocious when I look at it today. But I'm proud of it too, because I'm not going to let that lack of education stop me from communicating. And some people would say that, like, dude, look at this thing. It's all spelled bad, all these grammatical errors. And I said, well, I still have a right to communicate. I believe I still have a right to express myself. Don't tell me I can't do this. Like, this shouldn't even be out here. It's so atrocious. Well, hey, there you go. That's part of the technological revolution, though. Poor people and ignorant people like myself had access to the machines to make a magazine, copies, a copy machine and personal computers and stuff like that. And so once that happened, like, I was right at the forefront of it. Once I had that power, no one was taking it away from me. And then once I was called myself a publisher, boy, that was powerful. You'd call up a record company and go, I'm with Michael at Publishing. Oh, let us send you a bunch of free stuff. Let us send you, and back in the day, I was putting out 40,000 zines, 40,000 at the top. Boy, that was a big deal. That was a big fucking deal to people, especially printed magazine. Hi.
Hi, did you drop something?
I had to plug in my computer. Sorry. I know we'll edit this out, though, probably. Maybe not, but...
I kind of like that silence. Maybe I'll put the dog whistle into there.
Uh-oh. The whole podcast is one big dog whistle.
It really is. And it's turning frogs gay, and Mike Hunt is going to show up and virtue signal to all the white supremacists who are suddenly going to turn into sweet potatoes.
I'm thinking about Carmi and the work we did in her basement. I'd live on her couch. Boy, that was some of the best times. Looking back on it, it was so innocent and naive, and we don't know what the fuck we're doing, but we're able to go out and have drinks and be treated like big deal publishers. And it was just so cool. It was just such a cool time. It was really probably out of my whole publishing experience, that's probably my favorite time. It was a good time. Mike, Diana, all that stuff that was really neat. Go Gallery. It's cool.
Do you think Naked Aggression should have a resurgence?
Oh, I wish. I don't know how to do anything resurgent wise at this point. I do want to put out the back issues in a print on demand book, because I think they're cool, part of my history. But that's fun and ego. And I always think, I guess I am getting old, as you tell me. But that's when you start doing that stuff. I'm trying to create something new, something progressive. And since I've been so ahead of the curve most of my life, I figure I'm at the age where the next project I do will be right on time.
Nice. Very nice.
If I'm a little slower. Like enamel pins, I was ahead of the curve on that too.
Now you can get an enamel pin of everything.
I know.
You should go up to every kid with an enamel pin on their jacket and go, "You're welcome."
Yeah, right. You're welcome, kid. Those are the funniest.
What if you traveled to everybody that you were able to make a contact with from your Celebration and Suffering book? Do you think that they would be the same person in 2019?
Oh, that would be interesting to do, and I've often thought of doing that. But that project is dead to me now, because that's the one project that I did with my partner, my ex-partner, that was supposed to be a mutual vision. And we did work together on that. Before that, it was all my stuff. So that, she has a lot of her work in there. And I'm barely interested in talking about it. I'm proud of the work, but it's too much heartache.
Would it be too much to ask to, if we provide in the info section of this episode, the link to the Internet Archive links to this so our listeners can watch it?
Oh, no. I love that it's out there and available.
Fantastic.
I wouldn't be interested in doing it again just because of that. I want to do something so different. Like I'm making carpets now, carpet paintings and sculpture, and I'm into physical art now, like that. And actually, I think some of the greatest art I did that was progressive has been GIFs. And I made memes 20 years ago when the internet first started. I was making memes and GIFs. So I hope to get my hard drives back so I could find some of the earlier stuff I did. I put up like the Columbine blooper reel video when YouTube was really young, and it was one of the first videos they banned. And it has like the Benny Hill video, it's because kids from I put out this book called Trenchcoat Diaries when the Columbine shooters happened, and a bunch of kids from the Trenchcoat Mafia in Colorado sent me a bunch of stuff like videotapes and stuff like that. And so I put out this little short. You can still find it, the Columbine blooper reel. And so I like doing digital memes. I think digital memes, GIFs, all that kind of stuff is the new art.
Much like doodles.
Yeah. It's really cool. Like the meme and the digital, all that kind of stuff, short videos. That's what I'm into. I sort of want to get back. Like podcasting is the new art. It's something cool. So memes, GIFs, short videos, I'd really like to, I like sculpture, but it feels pretentious. So I almost like to do sculpture and that stuff to illustrate something digital online because you can communicate with the world in seconds, and that's really cool. You don't need a fucking gallery and cheese party and all that, or street art. Street art's very much like digital art, and street art are very similar to me. It's like there's no middle people. It's just you and me, me, you and the consumer.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and tune in to our next episode wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. You can find us at Speak of the Devil Pod on Twitter and contact us at speakofthedevilpod@gmail.com. For Shane's artwork or to support his endeavors, please visit ShaneBugby.com or find him on Twitter at ShaneBugby. I've been Nannerl. Have a good one.
Oh, and ShaneIsTheDevil.com.